Hello and welcome to your BMA annual representative meeting guide on motion writing. We hope you find this useful, and if you need any further help, please do get in touch. Meet your ARM team. A motion is a statement and/or proposal that is presented to conference, which will then decide if it should be supported. A representative from the region or committee submitting the motion will be given an opportunity to persuade the conference to agree with what it says, and any delegates who wish to speak against will have a chance to raise their objections before a vote is taken. The motion should clearly set out the issue that you want to discuss and the action you want the conference to take. Delegates to conference can read the motion in their agendas, and it will also be projected onto the large screen at the front of the conference hall as it is debated. ARM motions come from various sources. This enhances our reach to the grassroots, and we would encourage you to submit motions for the ARM. The agenda will be divided into various sections as outlined. There is also the opportunity to submit emergency motions for consideration by the Agenda Committee. This is not a blanket opportunity to submit any motion. It must be on a topic that no one could possibly have known about before the closing date for submission of motions. So check that it is not on a subject that is news to you, but that was already known about. You must also have a seconder from within the RB. If your emergency motion is accepted, it will be debated in the slot at the end of the meeting called Motions Arising from ARM. It is likely that there will be more motions on the agenda than there is realistically time to debate. Therefore, the Executive Committee will prioritise motions in the agenda, aiming to allow a diverse range of motions to be discussed. Motions will be placed into timed sections, with those at the end of a section less likely to be reached. If you feel that a motion lower down in the section should get debated, then you can select it as a chosen motion. Sometimes, the Agenda Committee themes motions into a common category and ensures that all bracketed motions will reflect in the composite that is written. They also ensure that there is enough time to discuss motions, although sometimes, if a motion has many debaters, it extends beyond its allocated time. Chosen motions. This is your chance to correct things you feel the Executive Committee have got wrong. You will receive a chosen motion ballot form, with which you can vote for motions the Executive Committee have not prioritised. This can be a motion from the Part 2 agenda, or a motion from within a bracket, which can be chosen to be debated as a standalone motion. The 5 chosen motions that receive the most votes will be debated later in the ARM. There is a bit of an art to writing an effective motion, that is, one that is clear, succinct, stands a good chance of being passed and then of being selected for debate at the ARM. We will try to clarify what makes a motion succeed. Motions need to be concise, easy to understand, logically argued, well presented, and action-oriented. If the Agenda Committee finds it difficult to understand the purpose of a motion or follow the case it argues, it is likely that conference also won't be able to understand the motion, regardless of how well intentioned it was. Motions should be drafted in terms that are clear and unambiguous. If a motion is unnecessarily long, uses too many words to convey its message, is incoherent or unclear in parts, this will reduce its chance of selection. Motions should be kept as short as possible. If it is necessary to incorporate more than one idea, and the region or committee does not wish to divide the motion into 2 or more completely separate items, the various parts should be itemized, little 1, little 2, etc., so that they may be voted upon separately. If a motion is too long or has conflicting messages, it reduces its chances of being chosen. Similarly, if it says nothing new, the Agenda Committee will put it lower down in the order. We recommend you choose new and topical motions, rather than repeat existing policy. Before submitting any motion, check the existing policy database for the current position or lack of on your chosen topic. Conferences need exciting, topical debates. Even if your motion fails, it can still offer the conference a valuable perspective. Questions to ask when drafting a motion. Is there a problem? What is it? What is the solution? What needs to be done to achieve the solution? For example, gathering evidence, further research, more funding, etc. Think about what you want to persuade the members of the RB to agree to. Can the BMA solve the problem itself? Ask someone or something to take action? Raise awareness of the problem or its solution? The proposal is what constitutes the action. This has to be an integral part of the motion. What does a motion look like? All motions at the ARM begin in the same way, that this conference or that this meeting. Then you need a verb. What is the meeting doing? It is your choice. Here are some suggestions. Appeals, asks, calls, demands, requests, believes, considers, deems, judges, regards, backs, cares, defends, endorses, upholds. These verbs could be used in a preamble or introduction to define the problem, such as deplores, or in the proposal to define the action, such as calls for. The nature of our ARM is to hear from every voice, be it nation-specific or not. But a clarity of where this motion would apply goes a long way in the motion achieving success. We ask that you consider the terminology used, as well as the possible intended and unintended consequences of motions on members in the devolved nations. Some areas where differences in terminology and impact may arise include pay and contractual issues. There are various contracts and pay uplifts across nations. Governmental positions. Health is a devolved issue for all 4 governments. NHS policy. There are different departments of health across nations. System regulation. There are different regulators across nations. And education. There are different responsible organizations. A motion saying, "Conference believes," is nice, but often achieves little. A motion could ask for the Medical Students Committee or the wider BMA to do something, for example, lobbying. It can sometimes be useful to call on the relevant organization to do something to fix a problem you've identified, but research who this would be. Any facts and figures in a motion must be accurate, or it cannot be debated. Limit the preamble in your motion. It is tempting to spell out the exact thought process for your motion, but you should be outlining this in your speech. If there is any fact or reference vital to your motion, consider including it in a stem. The example on the slide is self-explanatory. Make sure that each individual clause in your motion makes sense if it is put directly after the stem, even if other parts of the motion are rejected. Ideally, a motion will be passed, become a resolution, and direct the policy of the BMA. When you speak to the motion, you can add more details to back up your argument, but the motion needs to be clear about what it is referring to, what it is calling to be done, and by whom. Make sure that you expand any acronyms the first time you use them. The Conference Agenda Committee and Secretariat will occasionally make amendments to motions to make them clearer, but if they don't know what the motion is trying to say, they will not be able to improve it. If your motion asks someone or something to take action, make sure that they are in a position to take that action. For example, you can't ask that the BMA introduces a specific regulation governing the work of nurses, because A, the BMA is not a regulatory body, and B, the BMA is an organisation for doctors, not nurses. What you could ask the BMA to do would be to lobby the Nursing and Midwifery Council to introduce a specific regulation governing the work of nurses. The BMA can lobby other bodies, so this would be realistic. The fewer points that your motion makes, the fewer points there are for people to disagree with, and the more likely that it will be passed. Try to be as succinct as possible. Remember that when you speak to the motion, you can expand and explain why you have asked for something. But make sure you include enough information for it to make sense when read alone. You will need to propose your motion to conference delegates in a short speech. This is your chance to expand upon the motion and explain to other members why they should vote for it. You may be tempted when wording your motion to include some of what you plan to say for your speech. For example, reasons the motion should pass or background to the motion. But this will convolute the motion unnecessarily. The best motions that go on to become BMA policy are precise and to the point. A factoid is an item of unreliable information that is reported and repeated so often that it is assumed to be factual. Motions that contain such anecdotal facts cannot be validated, and there is a high risk that they will not be able to form part of BMA policy. They are also an easy target for speakers against your motion. At its most basic, a motion can simply be a statement. The aim in this case is to persuade the forum to agree with the statement. For example, that this meeting condemns research fraud. This is unlikely to generate any argument, but it makes clear the BMA's position, including to the outside world. More common are motions that make a statement but perhaps have 2 or more points. For these motions to pass, the proposer has to persuade the meeting to agree with every point they contain. For example, if the motion is that this meeting notes that dogs are better than cats and supports banning cat ownership, then the proposer will have to get the meeting to agree that dogs are better than cats, but they will also have to get the meeting to agree that they support banning cat ownership. It may be that the meeting agrees that dogs are better than cats, but that it doesn't agree that cat ownership should be banned. The meeting would therefore not agree with the motion, and it would not be passed. Dividing the points of a motion into parts allows the points of your argument to be separated out, and to be passed or to fall separately. Dividing a motion into parts also simplifies more complex motions. Please note that each clause must be able to stand separately when added to the stem, which states your original argument. For example, a motion could be that this meeting notes that dogs are better than cats and supports Little 1, the banning of cat ownership, Little 2, the subsidization of dog food, Little 3, tax breaks for dog owners. The proposer might manage to convince the meeting to support the statement that dogs are better than cats, but not manage to persuade the meeting to support banning cat ownership. The meeting could then agree that dog food should be subsidized, but disagree with dog owners receiving tax breaks. If it was agreed to vote on the motion in parts, then Part 2 would be passed, but Parts 1 and 3 would fall. If the proposer does not manage to convince the meeting to support the statement that dogs are better than cats, the stem, then the rest of the motion also falls. Unprioritized grey motions are those that are judged by the Agenda Committee to be a low priority due to time constraints, defective wording, being overtaken by other events, or already being BMA policy. Those motions are unlikely to be reached or debated, but you can request for a grey motion to be one of the chosen motions. Here is a motion checklist. Please ensure you tick these points off before submitting. Sometimes, the ARM Agenda Committee will think that motions are not controversial, and hence they are accepted and become A motions. The procedure for these is that they are debated at the end of the section, and if agreed, all become policy. AR motions are usually not controversial. They are not debated and do not become policy. UK Council Chair accepts these without debate for Council to consider after the ARM. We are happy to help you if you need further advice and support. Contact the Motion Advisory Service via info.motions@bma.org.uk. You can view existing BMA policy at web2.bma.org.uk/policyarm. Thank you.